Are
Oh,
we on?
and we are live. I'm going to turn it over to Karen.
Okay. Okay, welcome everybody. This is our second annual Northwestern University Alumni Admissions Panel for FGLIs. For some of you who might not be familiar with that term, I hope most of you are, but it's FGLI and it stands for first generation in college or low income. So if either one of those or both describe you, you belong here. My name's Karen Miller. I'll be your moderator for tonight. I graduated from Northwestern in the 80s as a pre-med in the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences. I actually did my senior project on first generation students at Northwestern. And it was kind of interesting because back then everything was on paper. I had to advertise for subjects in the Daily Northwestern. And one of the provosts saw it. He saw the ad and he just called me up and asked, like, what I was doing, what kind of things we needed, and how they could help. And so out of that phone call, we started doing like first gen, like seminars and firesides and stuff like that. So it kind of kickstarted the programs for first gens. Um, After that, of course, pre-med, you go to med school. I did a combined degree, MD, MBA. Came back to Northwestern again for residency. I'm kind of like a frequent flyer here. I did an underserved medical area to pay off my student loans. And then I came back a third time to be in the Northwestern Research Park, where I did a web company in the early 90s at the start of the internet. And I sold that to America Online. And since that time, I've worked in administration and workers' compensation. So our goal tonight is to sort of show you all that Northwestern is a very FGLI friendly school. Because that's really important, because no matter what resources or programs or whatever the reputation of a university is, it doesn't do any good if it's not accessible to you once you go there. And it's also not a fun place to be if you don't feel like you belong or that people are understanding of where you're coming from. So I'm just going to go over a couple of like sort of the concrete evidence of FGLiness sort of Northwestern. One thing is, I'm sure you've all followed the rankings, which have been going up for a couple of years now. And a large part of the reason is the rankings have changed to track FGLI success postgraduate. And that's a lot of the reason that Northwestern's rank has gone up. They're looking at people who've had Pell Grants and how they do 10 years out of college and mid-career. And that's a big, the success in that is a big factor. It's not just how many FGLIs you have or how, what your graduation rates are, but it's how people do in the long run. Our president, Michael Schill, is also a FGLI, which is unusual for major universities. We now have a fundraising campaign to create sort of an endowment so low-income students can always be loan-free and fully funded. And we also have an office of first generation and low-income initiatives, which is unusual. A lot of places have FGLI initiatives, but they're kind of stuffed into student services and stuff like that. And we actually have a separate office. So from here, I will turn it over to our panelists. They're going to tell you about some of their experiences with programs, specifically for FGLIs, and just how Northwestern guaranteed access to all the general programs and the things that you think you might not be able to afford. And they're also going to just hopefully through their stories and the things that they tell you about, you're just going to get sort of a feeling of what the vibe is like. Okay, so let's take it away. Our first speaker will be Tiffany McKinney. She graduated in 2004 from the Medill School of Journalism, majoring in journalism and minoring in Spanish. She is in the Denver area. She began her career as a journalist in New York City, working in the entertainment field as a staff writer for People magazine. And then after that, she moved to Atlanta, where she transitioned into corporate communications and went back to school for an MBA at Georgia Tech. She currently works in customer experience strategy for a financial technology company. Our second speaker is going to be Chloe Wong. She's a former Questbridge Scholar. She graduated in 2021 from the Weinberg School of Arts and Sciences with degrees in anthropology, global health, and Asian American studies. She's based in Chicago, and she's currently in a management training program with McMaster Car Supply Company in strategy and operations. And also she's getting an MPH from NYU at the same time. Our third speaker is going to be Taylor Hancock. She's currently an undergrad in the class of 27. She's with the Medill School of Journalism. She's majoring in journalism and history and global health. She's very involved in a number of activities, the student government, and also a lot of the student publications and media, our student newspaper, the Daily Northwestern, the radio station, WNUR, and Northwestern News Network. And she also works a work-study job on campus as well. Our fourth speaker is going to be Danielle Rodriguez, who's a 2022 graduate of the School of Education and Social Policy with a double major in social policy and legal studies. He was very involved in student government, where he was the VP of the Associated Student Government, and he was also on the board for a pre-law fraternity and involved in the Alianza Latin Student Union. He was a student employee and later also worked in admissions, and he's currently a law student at University of Iowa, and he's squeezing this in between his law exams finals. So we appreciate that, Danielle. Our last speaker, he's not here yet, but his name is Elias Gordon, and he's a 1983 graduate of the McCormick School of Engineering with a degree in civil engineering. He's currently based in Chicago and runs his own law firm specializing in construction law. And he's been very involved as an alumni, especially with the NAA Next program, which is an externship and shadowing program that matches students, current students and alumni to develop career experiences. So with that, we'll take it away. So Tiffany.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Tiffany. One of the things that I guess people always ask me a lot about, somehow I got out of Northwestern with no loans. I had a fantastic financial aid package, right? And so it's one of the things I always want to drive home. Neither one of my parents went to college, obviously. My dad actually dropped out of high school. And so I was completely new to the college experience and what it entailed. All I knew was that, hey, college is expensive. It's going to cost a lot of money. That's what everybody told me. So, I was always looking for scholarships, external scholarships and things like that. And when it came time to start applying for financial aid, I was so shocked that I ended up with a package from Northwestern that involved me having no loans. I couldn't believe it. I was super happy about that. I applied to Northwestern, Stanford, and NYU, Emory, and Northwestern had the best package in terms of like what I had to pay because it was zero. What I learned too, and talking to my friends who were also kind of applying at the same time, is for a lot of my friends who even stayed in state, they were spending more to stay in state than I was spending to go to Northwestern. So something that I think is really important as you guys all embark on like the journey, there are resources out there available for you, right? Northwestern has, I believe it's 100% like no loan commitment to funding, to meeting financial aid for their students, which is a huge help, especially as you kind of enter the workforce, right? It was incredible for me. So that's something that I really wanted to just kind of highlight for all of you out there. Don't be scared by the price tag. It's kind of like MSRP on cars, right? If you need the aid, Northwestern is committed to providing it. I can also tell you that in my freshman year, as I was going into sophomore year, my family had some additional financial troubles, and an upperclassman at the time, I was kind of confiding in them, and the person told me, "Hey, write a letter to the financial aid office. Just let them know what's going on. They might be able to help." And I thought to myself, like, surely this school isn't going to care about like little Tiffany, right? They have 8,000 undergrad students. But sure enough, like the financial aid office worked with me, and they gave me additional aid to help me out, and it was incredible. So I always want to highlight that, don't be scared by the price tag. Northwestern will work with you and meet your financial needs. So.
Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about, or?
Like if I'm talking about I guess one of the things also is work study. So
Yeah.
some of you may be familiar with work study, but essentially what happens is it can be part of your aid package where they say, okay, get a work study job, you get a job on campus, and you get paid for it to help you out with some extra money coming in. So I was fortunate enough to take part in a program called Summer Academic Workshop. It's SAW, which is actually also a good program to talk about. It's like 3 weeks before the school year starts. Northwestern invites you out. They cover the cost, transportation, airfare, housing, food, everything. And you kind of get like this 3 week introduction into Northwestern, like a sneak peek or a preview before everybody else comes in. And you get to take some classes, you get to meet some of the professors, you just kind of get acclimated, you meet some other students. And that was great. And during that is when I was at Norris Center and the bookstore was there and they were advertising, hey, we've got work-study jobs at the bookstore, come get free books. And I thought, oh my God, that's me. I need the free books, right? So I got a job at the bookstore and was able to get my books free. And so that was a huge help. I never knew how expensive books could be until I got to college. So just know you will be spending a lot of money on books. But again, part of your aid package, so don't be too concerned. And then I found another work study job. I hate saying the name. At the time, it was called the escort service. It was not that kind of an escort service. Essentially, you have access to a car, and like people call. It's like almost like a cab service, like Uber before Uber. And students on campus can call and say, "Hey, like I'm at this party. Can you take me to this other party?" Or, hey, I need to go to the grocery store. And within a certain mile radius, we would pick kids up from the dorms and take them where they need to go. So I was like, oh, that's great. I get access to a car and they pay for the gas. I'm in. Where do I sign up? So those are my two jobs. There was another job, actually, phone-a-thon, where you call alumni and you ask them to donate money. That was a great way just to see what people were doing. Like, hey, we're all the Northwestern grads. How much money are they donating, right? So definitely be strategic about work study. Like try to find jobs that either match your interests or can offer you some kind of additional incentive. Like for me, it was books, car, alumni network, and I would say the other thing is like the internships. Being in Chicago, take advantage, right? You are in the middle. You have a huge city, lots of companies there. I ended up working at the Chicago Bureau of People magazine on Mondays and Fridays. So I worked with my Medill advisor, cleared my schedule so that on Mondays and Fridays I could go down. I took the L downtown and I worked for People, which was amazing. So there's lots of ways to just take advantage of being in a big city, having access to some of the best networks that are out there, and making sure you make it count for you. So those are all my tips.
Okay, sounds great. Did you do study abroad as well?
I did. That's another
Yeah.
thing. I will add that. I thought study abroad would be completely out of reach for me. I didn't think that was
Mhm.
something that kids that don't have money do. But I did get to study abroad in Spain. I was a Spanish minor as well, so that was awesome. And I went to Spain for a quarter, and it was fantastic. And that was also covered by my package. So
Okay, sounds
yeah.
great. Thank you so much. Yeah, because I mean, I think that's the theme, that nothing is going to be out of reach to you, because of your financial situation or whatever. Okay,
Absolutely.
next up, Chloe is going to tell us about her experiences and some of the programs that are available.
Yeah,
Chloe?
absolutely. Kind of picking back a little bit, I also studied abroad, and Northwestern was a great help in making that happen, in making it part of the financial aid package, but also considering all of the other costs you might not initially think about, like plane tickets that you have to front at the beginning. And there was a program called Bridge, actually one of the programs, I'll talk about another in a few seconds, that helped cover the plane ticket. So it also goes to show how considerate offices were about students' needs. Um, I want to chat a little bit about the on-campus support that I received after getting there, because college was such a daunting experience, and now my foot is in the door, but what now? Like, who is going to help me? I'm originally from New York City, so it was a long way from home. It was my first time in Chicago. We didn't have the finances to tour campus, so it was my first time on campus ever when I moved in. Um, and there was an organization called the Women's Educational Aid Association that was a mentorship program, but also provided some stipends. Because in addition to financial aid and books, there's also toothpaste and soap and pajamas and all these other costs that start adding up really quickly. And they were able to help me out with that, but also allowed me to start building my network, which was really awesome, especially as a freshman, without that necessarily generational background of having networks. Um, in transparency, I also experienced some food insecurity while I was on campus because food is another big cost. And there were programs that were available to help support me when work study checks weren't quite enough or just to get me through a bit of a tight spell. There was a program called Purple Pantry that allowed me to supplement um, when I was living off campus with like various dry goods or perishables that I could pick up. Um, and just help me out here and there. And there were a lot of programs like that that were aiming to bridge the small gaps because it's easy to get there and then see, oh my God, like everyone seems to be doing great. When sometimes for FGLI students, you're like that duck metaphor of frantically swimming under the surface. Um, when I first got to campus as well, I had signed up for a program called Bridge. It's one amongst a few other programs that are meant to be pre-boarding of sorts to connect the gap between high school and college to allow you to acclimate to college level courses on your own pace. And also allow you to start meeting other FGLI students, other first-gen low-income students, build camaraderie with folks that resonated with your own experiences or upbringings or struggles and allowed you to derive strength from each other while also being able to get a bit of a head start and start figuring out what your new life is going to look like as a college student. So I'm really grateful that Northwestern had these small things that I didn't really think about before coming because my priority was just getting my foot in the door. Um, and that allowed me to come to today.
Okay, great. Did you have some experience with like mentoring when you were?
Yes. Yeah, I can chat a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So I received mentoring when I was part of the Women's Educational Aid Association. So I got to hear from other FGLI women who were upperclassmen, as well as other FGLI female or non-binary alum who had been through similar scenarios, been through similar struggles, and a lot of them went on to be successful because that's what happens when you go to Northwestern, and you have that grittiness with you as a FGLI student. Um, and I was able to receive some of those experiences. Um, while being a student as well, there's the Student Enrichment Services Office that also offered a on-campus mentoring program between FGLI upperclassmen and FGLI underclassmen. So even as you're going through everyday life, you're receiving little tips here and there about how to acclimate and how to start engaging with your resources, with your professors, with your network, with the environment around you. And you can take a bit of a shortcut compared to others and benefit from that mentoring.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other programs that you can think of or experiences or
Uh, other,
Biochem Excel? I mean, I don't know if that was something you were in or if you wanted.
Biochem Excel is another one of those pre-boarding programs, as well as the summer academic workshop, which I believe Tiffany was in. So those programs, they were a little different in nature. Biochem Excel was a little more STEM focused. Bridge was a little more humanities focused. And you were able to kind of get that similar experience, but also focus in on a subject area you were interested in, at least as a freshman coming into college.
Okay, thanks so much. That was really helpful. I think next up is Taylor. Taylor?
Yeah. So to start off, I know you gave me a little bit of an intro, but I also kind of piggybacking off of everyone else currently work a couple work study jobs. So I'm not an alum yet. I'm a current second year. So I work about going into next quarter, it'll be 3 different jobs at Northwestern. So I work with the admissions office as a tour guide to help out prospective students. And then I also work at our Northwestern Career Advancement Office, which is a wonderful resource that I'll get to talk about later. And then I'm also a research assistant as part of an undergraduate research assistantship program that we have here at Northwestern. But to start out, one of the biggest things as someone who kind of, when they were going through their college search journey, didn't really know what I was looking for. I kind of was just applying to schools that were out of state and also had the program that I was interested in. And as a journalism major, it was surprisingly more slim than I thought. So I had a lot of chance to kind of get to know more about Northwestern. And once I finally got in, I got in regular decision. So it was kind of like spur of the moment kind of situation. I noticed how many resources were available to me. So first and foremost, one of the biggest things that I know I struggled with a lot in high school was paying for club dues and club fees and things of that nature. But Northwestern actually has specific funding for things like that in college. So we have SAF, or Student Activities Assistance Fund, which basically is where, let's say you join a sorority or you join a kind of a club that has a road trip far off, then you have a fund that will support costs like that. So for example, as Karen mentioned, I'm part of a lot of different student publications. So I'm covering our women's basketball team in like at the beginning of the quarter, so in about a month. And I'm getting to go with some help from the SAF fund. I'm getting to go to LA to cover our women's basketball team at UCLA and USC, because obviously costs in LA are a lot more expensive than Evanston, and it is like a week-long trip almost. So stuff like that. There's a lot of funds for participations and like extracurricular activities, because I know that can be a big hindrance when you're deciding on, oh, well, I can't join this club because they have an $80 entrance fee or things of that nature. Another big thing with college, as everyone's kind of mentioned, is like that transition from high school to college. And it was something I really struggled with, especially in my first fall quarter, because everyone seemed kind of adjusted to this rigorous environment. And my high school was not like that at all. I always joke, like I have 10 times more homework now than I did in high school. But Northwestern has peer mentors, and we have two different departments. So for all Northwestern students, there's the Academic Support Learning Advancement Center, where they have peer mentors for specific subjects, whether that's economics, or we even have our history writing center and our regular like writing place where you can go and get essay feedback on whatever essay that you've written. Because Northwestern was the first place where I wrote an essay longer than like 2 pages. So I definitely needed the help. And then specifically for FGLI students, we have the Student Enrichment Services, which has been one of my favorite places at Northwestern, because there's peer mentors that are also FGLI students that help you study for a certain test, and they also can give you just advice on what's coming up next quarter. So for example, you'll usually know like about 8 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks in advance what classes you're taking next quarter. So it's super helpful when someone has already taken those classes and you kind of get that mentor feel. And then through SES, another big thing is I'm from Atlanta. So the first thing when I realized I was actually going to be going to Evanston was the weather. And specifically, how cold is it going to be? And do I need a coat? Yes, you very much do. But SES has a fund. It's their winter gear fund. And you get about $300 in partnership with JCPenney to basically get, I believe, one pair of gloves, one hat, one scarf, one coat, and a pair of boots, all paid for, as long as it's under $300, which mine was way below that, in trying to collect all that up. And it was really helpful for my first winter quarter because I especially had zero experience in facing off those kind of temperatures. So that's been a really big help. So Student Enrichment Services is one of my favorite departments at Northwestern. And then, as I mentioned, I also work at our Career Advancement Center. So I've kind of dabbled in a lot of the FGLI initiatives that we have there. So we have an initiative called Cat's Closet, where any student can go in and get as many interview clothes or professional wear clothes as they need. So as I said, I cover a lot of things for journalistic events, and like a lot of times they expect you to be dressed a little more professionally. And I did not have that many like business professional, business casual clothes. So I could go into Cat's Closet, grab a pair of shoes, grab a blouse. And it's not like typical thrifting, like it's much more like high quality. Like I have like a pair of Banana Republic pants. I have like some Ralph Lauren sprinkled in there from Cat's Closet. That was all just for free. It all stems from donations from alumni. So there's just a lot of different resources in like quick situations that you probably wouldn't think of ahead of time, but Northwestern has helped for.
Okay. Okay. All right. And can you talk about like some kids might be concerned about like how are they going to get home? What if they can't afford to go home? How does Northwestern handle that for FGLIs?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I'm from Atlanta. So definitely one of the biggest things for me was kind of getting to and from Northwestern. A drive was really not sustainable because it's about a 14-hour drive. So you kind of have to think about what housing you're gonna have during breaks or if you're gonna go home for break or not. So especially in my freshman fall, I did have a little bit of a debate on whether or not I was gonna go home for winter break. But Northwestern has an option to petition to stay on campus during breaks. Mostly for most FGLI students, or if you're an international student, you can just petition to have that cost not be charged to you for staying over during the break, especially for spring break. It's also very common for students to just stay in Chicago and go on a couple excursions. And one of the best things about Northwestern is we do have 4-year housing. So regardless of if you're a senior or a first year, you're going to get housing. So it's not like one of those things where if you're going off campus, you have to, a lot of your friends freshman year will be at other schools, will be looking for an apartment when they just got there, and you don't have to have that experience at all because we also have the 2-year housing requirement. So that's really to help Northwestern students really get more acclimated to living on campus and living with other people. And as well as kind of Tiffany mentioned with financial aid packages, a lot of people get refunds from Northwestern. So if you get a refund, then essentially, let's say you want to move off campus your junior year, your refund doesn't decrease, it'll more so increase a lot of the time. So then students can use that refund to pay for their rent while they're still getting Northwestern assistance to pay for housing, especially since Chicago housing is very similar to some bigger cities now.
Yeah. Okay, great. So it sounds like, I mean, I think Taylor's really covered it, but like just anything you need, it's going to be covered. And if you are an innovator, if you're going where no FGLI has gone before, just ask the student services department. Like if they don't have a program, you will start the program. They will figure out a way to get you the funding, and you'll come back next year and find out there's a whole program so everybody else can do it too. Okay. All right. Thanks, Taylor. Next up is Dan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel. I'm from Chicago. I currently attend the University of Iowa College of Law, so I'm actually currently in Iowa. But I'll be talking a little bit about just like, for starters, I worked at admissions as a student all 4 years, and one of the questions I often got was, will my identity as a first generation low income student impact me in any way? And, I just want to ease some worries. It won't at all. I like to tell people, like, Northwestern does follow a holistic model. They evaluate applications in the context of you as a person and not you as a number or you as, just a stat. And that was something that I think was really reassuring for me when I was applying to high schools. None of my family had ever gone to college. I was the first one in my family to kind of really go through the college search process. So it was really refreshing to hear that. And that's something that I like to, tell students when they're looking at Northwestern, is that this really is a place in which your identity as a first generation low income student is an asset for you. It's something that we as a university, and I know Taylor can probably speak to this right now as a current student, really do value our differences and really do value having, people from all unique backgrounds. And now kind of shifting a little to like, once you're here at Northwestern, obviously everyone thinks like, what happens next? Obviously I did. And as someone who, again, didn't have anyone who ever really gone to college before, I was really worried about, once I'm in college, how am I going to prepare for those next steps? And I think you'll find that Northwestern has a lot of great resources. One of the resources that I really used a lot as a first generation low income student was the office called Northwestern Career Advancement. Basically, every student at Northwestern, besides having their academic advisor and their advisor for their major minor, also gets a career advisor that is dedicated to really helping them succeed. And the great thing about the NCA office is that they also have different advisors for people interested in different tracks. So, for example, I was a pre-law student. I really wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be a lawyer at the time. Still want to be a lawyer. And so when I was going through the process, I was like, hey, I went to the career office and I was like, hey, please help me. I'm lost. And, they really held my hand every step of the way, from applying to internships and making sure that I knew about any programs that perhaps were of interest to me. And then once I actually was ready to sit down and begin to apply to grad school, they also held my hand through the whole process, from helping me really draft, those personal statements that are something that I never imagined I would have to do again after applying to college, to also just preparing for what an interview for graduate programs are. Obviously Northwestern is, a ballpark in itself, but, the grad school process is a whole other beast. And as someone who just recently went through it, I can tell you that the support that my Northwestern career advisor really gave me is partly why it was such a smooth process for me. And even at times, I also was able to be supported by other people on campus who really are here to help first generation low income students succeed. Some of my professors throughout my undergraduate experience really stepped up as mentors for me and helped me, really feel comfortable at Northwestern. Some of them even served as my recommenders for law school applications. And to this day, I still keep in touch with a lot of them, and they check in all the time. And so, once you're here at Northwestern, it's, we have all these resources, but they're really here to help you succeed. We really want you to succeed. We want you to feel like you are part of Northwestern. And it's not just because, we want to look good or we want to make Northwestern look good. It's because we really do care about you as a person. And I think you'll find that, there's people at this university that are going to really step up and make sure that you have what you need to be successful and be set up for that next step in life, whether that be grad school, a job, or research or whatever.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dan. Next up is Elias. We
Thank you.
introduced you before you got here, so
okay.
everybody knows what your story.
Well,
so go ahead.
Thanks everybody for taking a time to appear for the program. As a first generation student, came with 17 years old, some learning challenges, no prior experience. Northwestern transformed my life. I think there were several reasons for it. Even though I graduated 41 years ago, the big thing that has not changed over that 40 years is that Northwestern has smaller classes, they have more personalized attention. Because what I liked about Northwestern, the largest class we had was a lecture class in chemistry, which is 150 people. Compare that with places where you may have lecture classes 800, 1,000, 1,200. It was always a more personal touch that I liked about Northwestern. I had, about professors had open door policies. In many cases, years after the graduate, as long as they lived or were affiliated university, I would go back and visit them. The other thing that is Northwestern made massive strides over the past 10 to 15 years of reaching out to the first gen FGLI demographic. I would note Northwestern's president is a FGLI. And there has been a lot of interest and certainly formed the network to challenge that FGLI. I can say my own personal experience, you come into college not having context. That's not a problem because Northwestern has something I'm heavily involved with called Next. It's a Northwestern externship. You can shadow an alumnus in one of variety of professions. Mine is law. And what I do is I have half a dozen students every year comes to watch a federal court trial. Since we're 20 minutes away from the federal courthouse in Chicago, which is one of the busiest courthouses in the country. I especially try to reach out to first gen of FGLIs to get an idea of what it takes to go into law, what it takes to practice law, give some sense of the experiences. I'm happy to say that the first of my students are graduating from law school this coming year. I have Westbridge scholars, FGLIs that are actually applying to law school. I hope they will be successful. My goal is that as they go through their careers, that they can come back and help the newer generation. So it is a great program. And the other big resource that is not taken advantage of very much by students, FGLI or non-FGLI, is that you can also connect with alumni in a variety of fields. If you look at an alumni newsletter, they'll have a lot of alums at various times that have gone on to stuff. If you're a student, you have their email, you can reach out to them. Don't be afraid to do that, whatever college you may go to, because you can find the vast majority will be very helpful, especially those that are first gen, had to overcome challenges to get through to college. That said, we could also, the professor accessibility, still keep in touch with them after that. And wherever you go, I think it's important, it's important to try to maintain a contact. I will end with the recommendation of a book written by a Northwestern professor, which is wherever you go, I found to be very useful for my own kids in college. And I recommend to everybody I interview. or everybody I deal with. And it's called The Thinking Student's Guide to College. It is written by Professor Angela Roberts of the Department of Political Science. It's $13, and it gives you a lot of great tips as how to make the most of the college experience wherever you may go. But there are resources, as the other speakers have noted, Northwestern has a lot of resources, and they will continue to add to it. And there are a lot of alums like myself that also want to help the first gen and the FGLI demographic and try to help them advance their networks and progress in their lives. And hopefully they will pay it forward to future ones. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Elias. I think now, why don't we just go to questions? If anybody has any questions, definitely put them in the Q&A. Some of these things we've probably gone over, but I know people have come in at different times, so it won't hurt to answer them again. This one is from a student who is a Northwestern regular decision student, Questbridge finalist, and would like to know more about the financial aid packages, particularly the concern about transportation to and from campus, being able to afford plane tickets and that sort of thing. So I know we talked about that before, but does somebody want to just jump in and reiterate that?
I think the most important thing you have to do, and again, this is something I tell every student that I talk to that's considering Northwestern applying. When you finish your application, you absolutely positively have to get your FAFSA application in. And if you want to go to Northwestern or other private school, there's something called the CSS profile. These take time to put together. I had to do it for my kids and every year. But the important part is to get those in as soon as possible. So if you're in regular decision Northwestern, as soon as you get your application in, I know it's going to be kind of crazy around the New Year's, but once you get your applications, you immediately start on the FAFSA and the CSS. FAFSA are two different forms, and I will explain a little bit. FAFSA measures family income. CSS measures assets. Northwestern requires both, and I believe they also require a copy of family income tax returns. Be sure to get all those in as soon as possible. The goal is if they have it in at the time they issue decisions, and from my understanding, previous years, Northwestern typically issues regular decision admissions at some point around mid-March. If they decide to offer you admission, they have your information on file, the FAFSA, the CSS, and the other documentation. They will give you a financial aid offer within days. It's really, really important that you have offers by April 1st, because the vast majority of colleges will require you to pick a place by May 1st. And it's my own experience as a parent for my two sons who received very generous financial aid. It was a lot of challenge, takes a lot of time. It's a very weighty decision. So it's important that you submit the documents to whatever college requires it, so that April you can go through the task picking who offers a better financial aid. And yes, finances are very important, but it's important. They cannot make you an offer unless they have the information they request. And each one has their own secret formula. They'll never tell you what they use, but if they ask for it, be sure to get in as soon as possible after you've gotten your application in. I will also say, as far as transportation, I'm happy to say that there is a low-cost express bus service called PACE. PACE is a suburban bus service that opened in late 2023. It's called the Pulse Dempster Line. Maybe some of the students have taken it, and it connects the O'Hare terminal, multimodal terminal, to downtown Evanston. It's relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, maybe some of the recent or current students can talk. Do they run a shuttle to and from the airports for students like around break?
There isn't like a Northwestern shuttle necessarily, but there's something called the Kiss and Fly, I think, or Kiss and Buy. It's something funny like that.
Yeah.
It's about 2 blocks off of campus, so like right at the edge of where South Campus is and the dorms kind of end. You can kind of hop on it. It's really cheap. And it basically takes you from downtown Evanston, where like the Purple Line is, to about O'Hare's terminal. It takes about an hour. It's really good. Another underrated resource that people don't really talk about, and it's not something that is, I guess, public. It's not a secret, but basically, students who have cars or who are going to catch a flight to O'Hare or are flying out, they often will, post in group chats or whatever and ask if anyone is flying out and if anyone is flying out on these days and if they want to split an Uber. So it's, a really affordable way to get to O'Hare.
Yeah.
I'm from Chicago originally, so I didn't really have a long commute home, but I know that when I was a student, a lot of my friends were able to sometimes talk to financial aid about maybe getting some funding to cover the cost of a plane ticket to go home. And for those that weren't, Northwestern does do a lot to make sure if you are staying back home for the holiday that you do feel like you are surrounded by family and loved ones. When I was a student, Thanksgiving was the holiday a lot of people kind of didn't go home for because it was just so expensive to go home for a few days. But the Quest and the Shale Catholic Center often put on like a Thanksgiving feast where people could come eat and have a warm meal and really get to experience like they're at a Thanksgiving dinner with their family. So there's
Yeah.
options. It's just a question of, reaching out to financial aid, reaching out to SES and reaching out to your community and asking them like what's available. And if so, like getting in early on it, especially because as the quarter goes on, people do get busier and you don't want to be one of those people that if there's a resource and the app closes, oh, well, now you have to stay back because you missed the deadline.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's a lot of different options and be a lot of different circumstances, but just know that it's covered. They have programs, they have funding. Um, if worse comes to worse, somebody will take you home, I mean, you can stay in the dorms, they can fund you to go home and it will all just be worked out. It's not going to be a barrier to being at Northwestern. Okay, we got a lot of questions. We'll go to the next one. What role did mentorship or networking play in your journey? How would you recommend current or future FGLI students build meaningful connections?
I think don't be afraid to reach out to alumni. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's kind of what I was gonna say. As a current student, kind of battling that about like networking and like mentorship. For me, when I first got to Northwestern, when everyone was talking about networking and mentorship, something that I honestly didn't really know what that meant. I was like, what do you mean? Like networking to me kind of just meant like, oh, I know I have my friends. Like, what is more than that? So I think so far as a sophomore, it's played a big part in a lot of my journey at Northwestern. This past summer, I actually had an internship, and the main reason that I even got it was because the person that the internship was named after was a Northwestern alum. So the moment she was like, "Oh, you're a Northwestern student," because obviously getting an internship after your first year is really not common. And like it's not a pressure that a lot of students get it. So, and I was the only one in that cohort that was an incoming sophomore. And she said the main reason was because I was a Northwestern student. She kind of felt like she had like the duty to help me out. So like a big thing that I do is I really just reach out to different alumni that are in my major or that recently stopped by and spoke at my class and just kind of mentioned that I had a great time listening to speak with, and I'd love to speak with them more. Stuff like that. It really helps build meaningful connections because even though you think that a lot of people are doing it, it doesn't feel that way on the receiving end for alumni. Even if they just graduated last year or even if it was 30 years ago, it doesn't make that much of a difference. I really just recommend like current FGLI students reaching out to people that either you're like, oh my God, how do you do what you do? Like I want to be you, or just reaching out to people that you're like, hey, they were in the same club as me. How did they get from point A to point B? That's really helpful.
yeah.
I also
Go ahead.
I highly recommend one book by a Susan Roane, Roane, How to Work a Room. Actually, I read that in law school, and I found that to be every bit as important as my law books because it talked about you go into a gathering of people, how you reach out to them, how you form connections. But I highly recommend it for everybody. It took me like 15 years after Northwestern to find it, but hopefully you can benefit from it now and as you go through your college journey to develop the connection. Trust me, the connections are important, but you have to do it. If you don't do it, you won't benefit. And even just don't be afraid to try.
Yeah. And I just wanted to mention, like, I think this is the one, can you guys hear me? Okay. The one hidden gem about Northwestern is the Medill School and the radio and TVF programs, the journalism, the radio, TVF, because no matter what field you're in, these are the people who are going to like do stories and report on people. And that's such a career booster for FGLIs because when somebody like say Tiffany or Taylor gets assigned a story, like, okay, I got to do something like on tech firms, and they'll just come looking through the Northwestern, research park for tech firms to report on. And, I had a tech company in the early 90s, and within a couple months, I had a full page feature in Forbes because somebody at Forbes who was a Northwestern grad had been assigned to, like, you need to do a story on a tech firm, and that's what she did. And that, you know, it's just a tremendous boost. They'll put you on lists, they'll solicit your opinion to talk on other stories, and you just get this kind of vibe as being like an expert or a hot company or a hot item. So, okay. Anybody else want to comment on that one?
I also wanted to add the importance of being strategic in making
Mhm.
your connections.
Mhm.
We all have a limited amount of energy. It's important to recognize like what is feasible. Like, for example, Daniel like was interested in law and joined the pre-law society and like tapped into that network. I was interested in public health and I like looked for public health internships, talked to the public health professors at Northwestern. And one of them even wrote my recommendation for my current master's degree program. So just being intentional about how, like, what are the fields you're interested in, and then dedicating the energy towards like building those connections and maintaining them over time. Even something as simple as joining a LinkedIn, like making a LinkedIn profile and then starting to connect with people who are working in or interested in the field that you want to go in. And then just going from there, because the magical part is that Northwestern has a space for everyone. And anything you're interested in, chances are someone at Northwestern, current or previous, has tried it, and you can find them on LinkedIn and go from there. Or even after you graduate, I know for a fact my company sources people from LinkedIn, and they source through connections of people who are currently at the company. So starting to build those connections early on and intentionally will go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to mention, like, we have our private alumni directory, and not everybody keeps that up as well, but it is very well indexed. Like, you can search by your city, industry, you know, all different kinds of things. So that's a really good resource. And then Northwestern has a lot of LinkedIn groups. You know, we have LinkedIn groups by city, you know, schools, general Northwestern groups, and you can tap into all of that as well. Okay, thanks.
The only,
Um,
Karen, I just want to add one quick thing here. I know
Yeah,
we're
go ahead.
we're talking about it a while, but also keep in mind that a lot of us we don't have networks, right? A lot of us we're figlies, right? We don't have. I know in high school sometimes I would meet people and I'm like, man, what do you mean your dad just gave you a job or gave you an internship, right? That doesn't happen for all of us. So keep in mind too that at Northwestern you're creating the beginnings of your own network, and the people that you're in class with, your professors, all these people are becoming your network now. And I can tell you that I am in touch with all of my Northwestern classmates to this day. I have two young daughters now. I took them to New York, and my mentor my freshman year is a host on the Today Show, and she gave us a behind the scenes of the Today Show and let my kids sit in the hot seat and record something. And like that was surreal to me, right? Because this is like this, I didn't have these opportunities as a kid. So also keep in mind that you are creating your own networks now and when you're in school. So that's going to open up doors for people to follow, for your families. It's going to change the trajectory of your own life, right? So just always keep that in mind too.
Yeah, I mean, half of it is the education and the other half is the post network, you know. I mean, that's really a big factor when you choose a college. Okay, so thanks. Next one. Does Northwestern, I think we addressed this before, but maybe people came in late. Does Northwestern have grants and scholarships to cover flights and tickets? That one. Do we have grants for hidden costs such as textbooks? Yes, we do. Everything will be covered. There's tuition, dorm, food, all that kind of stuff. And then there's like, I don't know, can somebody who's currently in talk about like the miscellaneous budget or how that works? Chloe or Taylor?
So when you get your financial aid statement, it'll actually have this all broken down for you. So a lot of times, like what you see on the internet is the tuition cost, which I have no idea what it is at this point. But it'll say you'll just see the tuition cost. But when Northwestern gives you your financial aid statement, it accumulates tuition, books, transportation is one of the costs on there. So like for me, they recognize that I'm not within, I think it's like 150 miles of the university. So it's automatically, there's transportation built into my aid. Another thing, books and supplies. once you become a student, there's a lot of resources where you can find free PDFs of certain books. Or, for example, I was in an English class this quarter and it required me reading like, I believe like 6 to 8 books in the one quarter. And we have a system here at Northwestern where you can just interlibrary loan request books, and you can just go to the library, get the book from a loan. And like 4 of the books that I have are all from the University of Wisconsin. And when I get back, I'm gonna just send them back. We also have like CAT's what's it called now? Lending library, which is in the main library, where students so I even did this, I took like an international relations class and I didn't need the textbook anymore. Just put the textbook on the lending library shelf and you can go and pick up another textbook from a different class. So there's a lot of different stuff, especially textbooks it has never been a concern. I've never met someone that was like, I just can't like get a hold of this textbook in any way, shape, or form. And it was transportation, the miscellaneous costs are really all built into your financial aid package.
Okay, great. Thanks. This next question's for Daniel. What was it like being a Latino student at a predominantly white university? How do you stay connected to people like yourself?
Great question. I feel like this is funny because I now go somewhere to grad school, and I feel like that's even a little bit more like
You're in
in terms
Iowa.
of diversity, like it's really good at Northwestern. I think it's obviously going to be a hard thing, I think, anywhere. And coming from a Latino background and also being a first generation low income student. And on top of that, I'm also the first in my family to be born in the US. All my parents and siblings are from Mexico. So there even is that other pressure. And I think that you'll find that Northwestern, there's students with that same identity as you. Like, there's students who are coming from first generation low income backgrounds. There's students who are coming from an immigrant background. And it's just a question of kind of putting yourself out there and, recognizing that, you will find someone that looks like you and you two can go through this together. You don't have to go alone. And I think something that people don't often really take into account, and now that I'm a little older and have gone through Northwestern, is that your difference as a first generation low income student is a strength. And that's something you need to remind yourself a lot about, is that yes, you are the first in your family to do this, but you also most likely won't be the last after you go through it. So when you're going through these places and you're going through these predominantly white institutions or predominantly upper class institutions, just be mindful of that. Know that just you being here is an accomplishment itself, in the sense that, a lot of these places historically have not always been set up for people of color. They haven't been set up for students from lower income backgrounds, but Northwestern recognizes that legacy back in the day and has done a lot to make sure that it is a welcoming space for you now. And I joined the Land Student Union and was vice president on it. And that was a resource that I used. We have a lot of student orgs that are affinity based, from Black Student Union, which is FMO, to APITA, to also the Quest Scholars, which you don't just have to be a Quest Scholar to be part of that org. It's an org for anyone who identifies as first generation low income. So there's people out there. There's niches for you to find yourself at. And believe me, like, I've done it. I made it through. And it was a really great experience. And I'm sure you will also have a great experience.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that answer. Okay, next up, we have a student from California, and she wants to know, what was your favorite activity or service experience at Northwestern? And also, how has Northwestern helped you become who you are today? So kind of 2 very diverse questions, but anybody can jump in. Maybe we'll start with the first one. What was your favorite activity or experience? Nobody had a favorite. Go ahead. Like
I think everybody should participate in Dance Marathon. I think it's a fantastic experience. It's a lot of fun. It's basically like an all-night dance party. So everybody, it was a fantastic experience. I would also say studying abroad for me was one of my favorite activities. And Daniel kind of touched on the affinity groups. I am biracial. I'm half Black. I was a member of the Black Student Union is called for members only. There's a place called the Black House where a lot of Black students would get together, study, hang out, play cards, whatever it is. There's lots of different sororities and fraternities and things like that. Whether you will go to a more of a traditional fraternity sorority, they've got your historically Black fraternities and sororities. They've got Latino fraternities and sororities. So I don't know, all of those things come to mind for me.
Okay.
I have two experiences, and maybe one that Karen might remember from my senior year. We had a football team that was losing not by 3 or 4 points, but 50 or 60 points. They won their first game
Yes.
in years, and the students tore the goalpost down. They
Yeah.
took it to the president's mansion, and then they threw it into the lake, because the lake's a couple miles away. And the story goes there were divers that went to go retrieve it. The other experience that I had was there is a very famous show called the WAMU show, Women's Athletic Association and Men's Union. And people in that go on to start, careers in Broadway and in the movies. And so before the internet, you had to wait in line. It was first come, first service. So my dorm, we would organize people. We had groups of people to wait in line over a period of 3 to 4 days before it opened up on Saturday and got tickets. So those are two memories, both of them. I don't think you can tear goalposts down. Northwestern's doing far better than they used to, and now you can get your tickets online. But those were my two favorite experiences.
Oh, you can still try. We freshman year, we were co-Big Ten champions. So in 2000, and definitely everybody go to a football game. It's a great experience. When I was looking at colleges, never on my list was it, I want to go to a D1 school for a football team. That was not something on my radar. But going to like my first Northwestern football game and just experiencing all of it's an incredible experience. And I should have mentioned that as my number one activity. It was a lot of fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, that's also my number one experience. Chloe and me were at Northwestern kind of the same time, and so she can probably remember my freshman year. Northwestern was like really good. Like we went to the Big Ten championship, which God, like Northwestern, that in one word, like who could think? And they bussed us. Like someone donated money and took all this. Like any if you signed up for it, you got to go to Indianapolis and watch the Big Ten championship. That was really fun. But like for real, like take advantage of those free tickets because we are a private institution. We typically are able to give our students free tickets to every sporting events. As someone now at another Big Ten school in a public setting, like that's not a privilege I get to have. Like I'm not paying for football tickets. That's not my journey right now. But for at Northwestern, like really do take advantage of the fact that these events are free to you. All you need is your student ID most times, or to sign up online on a form that's like, hey, do you want a free ticket? And then if you get it, you should really go.
Yeah, I think an answer to question number 2, how Northwestern made me what I am today, I think what it is, it gave me a level of learning, and I'm still learning right now. Even at the time I graduated from the engineering school, even at that time, roughly 60% of the students either were going on to graduate school or professional school, law school, business school, medical school. And you find out even if you didn't get the best grades, Northwestern still gives you an excellent grounding for when you do go on, for further study. And not necessarily reflecting grade, it just gives you that appetite for learning. It gives you the rigor it gives you tools that you can go on and do great things. And I think that's Northwestern's other unique strength is that, they give you the tools to go on and do great things, whatever it is you want to do.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Next up, we don't have it. This is asking what challenges did anyone face as an international FGLI, especially applying for financial aid, and how did they overcome them and strategies? Obviously, none of us are really international or from a different country, but I did live in international studies residential college, so I knew a lot of students who were from abroad. It's quite different back then. We used to, when they couldn't afford to go home, they would come sleep on our apartment floors and things like that. But things have evolved quite a bit. These are questions that I would probably refer to the admissions office, and they can help you with the specifics of your situation. There's another question farther back that asks like, well, I'm getting a green card and I don't know if it will be done in time. Again, talk to the admissions people now, and then they can sort of guide you as to what you need to do and not do. I don't believe, I'm not an expert in this, but
think Karen might have
is first.
froze. I think Nick also
Yeah.
linked the resource to international students financial aid. So feel free
Yeah.
to check out there / reach out to them directly. Oh, Karen's back. Great.
Yeah. Oh, was I gone that whole time?
Only for a
Little
little.
bit. Yeah.
Okay, okay. All right, well, I told you guys, just carry on without me. Okay, what are the various ways we can connect with alumni at Northwestern? There's all kinds of
There's-
ways. Yeah, there's alumni chapters in major cities all over the country and all over the world. So that's probably your main way to connect with people. What other ways do people have?
I know we're talking about LinkedIn. If you don't know what that is, do not worry. Like, I didn't know what that is. I wish I still didn't know what that was, unfortunately. I unfortunately now do have to know what that is as an adult. But it's basically like Facebook, but only for professionals. NCA like is a really great resource, the career office, to kind of help you navigate and set up your page. And then from there on, like you can search by like people in your area who went to Northwestern. Like you can really filter things down and just really like cold message people. I've never done it. I should probably do it, but it's a great resource. It's also a great resource for finding jobs, but it's, I would say start on campus. If there's an event and they're inviting alums to, come visit Northwestern to talk about X, Y, and Z, like go to talk X, Y, and Z. Some of your best, networking will come from those unexpected events that you don't really think that you should have gone to, and then you go and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I love now learning about, poetry and Kansas. I don't know, but yeah.
I would also say the Alumni Association has resources you can connect, that students in Northwestern can connect to alums, and you can ask a question, and using their artificial intelligence, they can connect with alums who might be in a position to answer that question. So I would definitely, if you end up coming here, definitely take advantage of that. And of course, I mentioned the next program, which is open to students of any level, from freshmen through graduate students.
Yeah.
I would also recommend the alumni conversations program that the admissions office hosts. You're able to, I think for interested juniors, you're able to connect with someone and just have a one-on-one conversation. You're also able to request a specific affinity group. So if you're interested in talking to a Latinx alum, a Black alum, an Asian alum, a FGLI alum, you're welcome to do that and have that conversation as well.
Yeah, and also the Alumni Association has all those affinity groups. They have a lot of affinity groups by career paths. Some of them are alums of particular schools. And they also have like the affinity groups for different identities as well. And so that's a great resource too. Okay. Oh, okay. This prospective student wants to ask, what is the most interesting aspect about the FGLI programs that cannot be found on the internet and was not covered in any of the FGLI week events? So basically, they want you to spill the tea. What's the inside scoop? What's the best FGLI programs, or the things that they can't find out on the web? Anything?
Question. I'm trying to think off of just the top of my head. I think this is maybe not a specific program, but more of just like a hack, if you want to call it that. But a lot of FGLI students go to all the events that offer free things.
Yes.
Therefore, my water bottle is from Norris. They were giving out free water bottles because like there was a Stanley collaboration with someone. A lot of random stuff like that happens on campus where there's just free things, and I recommend to flock to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a ton of free food. You may never need Purple Pantry because like all these events, they always have tons of food. So you'll never go hungry there. Okay. Somebody wants to know.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Karen.
Okay. Are we?
Hi, everybody. My name is Nick. I'm one of the admission counselors here at Northwestern. I've been trying to help answer some of the questions behind the scenes as we go along. But I do just want to be mindful of everybody's time before we wrap things up here. But just want to say thank you again to all of our panelists for sharing their own experiences. Thank you so much to Karen for helping moderate and steer the ship. But then last thing I just want to say, I know we weren't able to get to all of the questions. There were tons of really, really great ones, but I want to echo what Karen said earlier, which is that if we weren't able to connect with you, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Office of Undergraduate Admission. You can connect with us at the main admission line, which is ug-admissions@northwestern.edu. And also on our website, you can actually find your specific regional admission counselor too. So I am the counselor who covers Georgia and Texas primarily. So if you're from either of those areas, I'm your main point of contact, but you can find other people there as well. So thank you all again one last time for being here, and best of luck with the rest of the college application, and go Cats, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.